Today we're gonna take a look at the new Morningstar MC6 Pro. It's the newest MIDI controller released by Morningstar. This thing is pretty awesome, but probably the reason why you wanna buy it, it's not exactly the reason why I would tell you to buy it, which is the displays, the colorful displays. I bet about this later on in the video, but there are some things about this MIDI controller that are pretty amazing. Anyway, this controller is pretty much sold out most of the times, so if you're interested or looking for an alternative, you simply cannot find anything. In the next few days, I'm just gonna be uploading this huge video I'm working at right now, in which I'm gonna compare pretty much every MIDI controller that does a similar thing to the MC6 Pro. So if you're looking for an alternative, or simply you wanna know which one is the best, then make sure you subscribe to the channel. I'm Aleloy, this is Ale Suggests, audio and video suggestions for the creative minds, and let's get this video started. This video is brought to you by me, so perhaps if you want to head to the channel later, you could listen to some of the latest releases on Spotify and on Apple Music. I know, it's pretty terrible to tell you how awesome and great my own music is. So perhaps let's hear some of my listeners and let's see what do they have to say about my music. Oh my god, I love listening to... What's his name? Yeah, all the time, man. I listen to him all the time. It really calms me down like nothing else. So what is the Morningstar MC6 Pro? It's a MIDI controller in the shape of a pedal board. It will allow you to send different MIDI messages with one single press, or different MIDI messages with two press, or more MIDI messages with a long press. So it's a pretty powerful MIDI controller. It will also allow you to send keystrokes. It can send CCs for control changes or PCs for program changes. So pretty much anything MIDI, this guy can handle it. So without any further ado, let's take a close look at the Morningstar MC6 Pro. Okay, so let's start by taking a look at the dimensions of the device. I'm just gonna go through this very quickly. You can obviously pause the video if you're interested in that kind of stuff, and the ruler is got inches and millimeters, so you can take a look at whatever you care the most. I'm not gonna judge you. There you go. But for a more probably sensible comparison, I'm just gonna take in other MIDI controllers, and you can have an idea. Pretty much they are similar in size if it wasn't for the MC6 being a little bit wider. What about the height? Is also pretty similar. What about the MC8? There you go. So it's a bit tricky to have them both in the screen. The MC8 is quite a bit bigger, but let's see how much. So it's quite a bit wider still as well. And yeah, it's also a little bit thicker too. Let's now take a look at the hardware overview. We now have MIDI 3.5mm to the side. We still have the MIDI 7 DINs. These are 7 DINs because you can actually power the device via phantom power. It's pretty smart. Then you have the 9 volts DC, negative in the center, 250 milliamperes I believe it takes. But if you want to use the relay ports, then you need probably 350 milliamperes. Then we have the device. This is actually a USB-C port to plug it to your DAW, or you can actually power the device via this USB port. Then we have the host port. This is pretty usable because you can actually connect a keyboard to it. I'm gonna talk about this pretty soon. These are your Omni ports, which can be anything. You can actually connect an expression pedal, you can connect an external foot switch, you can connect MIDI ports out, you can actually make these becoming relay ports. Even though the manuals say you cannot do it, you can actually do it. And then you have the relay ports. These are 3.5mm. You can now plug in a MIDI controller. This can be a MIDI keyboard, drum pad. It could be anything, even someone like, I don't know, a MIDI fighter twister. So you can have some knobs, so you can now control anything you want. And it's got a USB host internally. This is pretty cool. you can not only connect a MIDI controller, but you can actually connect a QWERTY keyboard. Now, initially I thought this is pretty awesome because this means that if I'm editing the MIDI controller via hardware, then I can probably type in the name of the presets, but that is not the case. The only thing that you can do with a QWERTY keyboard connected is actually going bank up, bank down, and so you can pretty much use only the arrow keys, and also you can type A on the QWERTY and it will correspond to the A preset, and you can double tap A and it will correspond to double tap A. Is this useful? I don't know, maybe if you are connecting a wireless QWERTY keyboard, it could be kind of nice because you can control your MIDI controller remotely. It means you have like the dongle of your QWERTY here, you can control it from somewhere else if the pedal board is somewhere on the floor. And then you have these relay ports, which are pretty useful if you want to control perhaps your amp channels. Or sometimes you have some other pedals that don't take MIDI, but they still have the external foot switch ports, so you can just control those. As I said before, the Omni ports can also become relay ports. You can select this via the software. So if you are not quite happy about using 3.5 millimeters, which I wasn't, to be honest, you can still use a stereo normal guitar jack. Now, let's talk a little bit about the displays. I was imagining that I was finally gonna be able to see whatever it's written on the Morningstar MIDI controller, but this isn't necessarily the case. If your string is too long, if you have too much written there into the preset label, then you're still probably gonna struggle to read what's written in there. This is kind of annoying if you ask me, but there is another huge benefit, the colorful screen. Now, you can color code pretty much your presets, and this is gonna be much more helpful than actually trying to read what's written there. So for instance, this orange is one preset, bank, but now if I change the bank, I have this other bank in blue and this other bank is in red. So even though I may not be able to read the name of this bank when I'm standing, again, you can probably clearly see this from the camera, but the camera is just a few centimeters away from the MIDI controller. If you're standing, you're gonna struggle to read what's written in there. But again, you can color code this. And this is taking me to the second downside of the MIDI controller, which is the viewing angle. The viewing angle of the display is a little bit poor, which means that the colors may change and vary slightly according to the angle. So if you are a little bit tilted towards left, your cyan light blue may become green and your dark violet may become red, and your orange may also turn red, which defeats the purpose of color coding everything. And considering that some of the critics that Morningstar receive are pretty much all about the displays, because pretty much everything else is almost the best really there is out there, I was really hoping this time that we're getting right, and they kind of missed an opportunity, if you ask me. I want to show you how do I use this. I want to show you something cool. This is actually my tiny weeny pedal board. So you go a very small expression pedal and a triple foot switch that you can just hook up to the Omni ports, and now all of a sudden you got more switches, because obviously 6 switches may not be enough. So you have a choice to use a double foot switch, or you can also use a triple foot controller like this Electro-Harmonix. And this is instead how it looks with all the cables wired up. Obviously I still need to shorten this cable, but at the moment it's just doing its job. And then I've got the WIDI Bluetooth connected here. This is taking power from the device, so you don't need to hook up any cable at all. And if you're looking for any of this stuff, anything including the cables, the pancakes and the WIDI, I'll link everything in the description of the video. There are now 4 pages on the Morningstar MC6 Pro, and the way you access those is by pressing E and F together. So we're now in page 1, page 2, page 3 and page 4 of the preset number 003. It would probably make more sense if I pick a preset that has got more stuff going on in a page, but you got the idea. Also, we got profiles, so now you can create a profile. This will contain a full setup. You can probably use this if you're really gigging heavily with different bands. There is one thing I don't like about profiles in general. Usually you cannot swap things over. So if you have a preset in one profile, you cannot copy that to another profile, and this is no exception. Now there is another thing I wanted to mention. When it comes to the host port here, I just figured that I could hook this up with other MIDI controllers, such as the Morningstar MC8 for instance. This means that perhaps you could daisy chain pretty much multiple MC6 Pro all together, and you will just only share one power supply. This is pretty cool because it means that if you run auto switch and these are not enough, like 6 switch are not enough, you can use obviously the Omni ports, but you can actually get another MIDI controller and just daisy chain these and get the benefits of more screens. And I want to show you how editing the device via hardware is, and also how it looks like in the software. And I want to do first a very quick comparison with the MC8, because this is quite ridiculous. To be honest, nobody can ever read this. And even the way the menu has been implemented, I believe it's not as good as before. For instance, here's the MC8. Now it's a bit tricky to have them both in the same screen. Alright, this seems fine. So if I do this, you can probably clearly tell the difference, that if I want to edit something here, the preset number A, I can now edit the messages and just you know, decide what is the action. Is it gonna be released, long press? And I don't even believe the camera is focusing that well. Yes, it is. But anyway, you can clearly have an idea that editing this is much easier than editing this. So if you are editing stuff on the fly when you're gigging, this is something to consider. You will probably not be able to do that. The only way you will be able to do that is you will plug Bluetooth 3.5 millimeters WIDI here, and you will need to do that via the iPod. That's the only way, or you will have to have like a laptop with you. Now, I'm not a big fan of that because editing on the fly, it's something you must be able to do, in my honest opinion. Because if you're gigging, something goes wrong, you need to be fast and edit something during the, I don't know, the sound check. People don't want to wait for you pairing your device with the iPod and blah blah blah. That's not what we want to do. I thought it was a little bit bizarre that they couldn't use this display in a better way. But I don't know, I really hope that we'll fix this in next firmware update. Okay, so here we are into the software, and I'm just gonna quickly show you how you can actually change the colors. So you will create your preset 1, you will give it a short name and a long name, and then you will just decide your background color. Let's pick I don't know, just a yellow. And then you will decide the color of the strip. I'm just gonna show you how that look like in a moment. And then we will choose how will the color be when that preset is toggled, and what is the color of the strip when it's toggled. And we can also choose a different color of the text. I'm just gonna select black for this. If I press save presets, we're gonna take a look at how does that look. There you go, you have preset 1 and it's black with this light blue strip. And if I now press, you now can see that the color will dim. Now this could have been a different color as well. So let's go back to the software again. So instead of having a dim orange, I now want it to become green, for instance. And the strip, I want that to become violet in position 2. So if I save and I go back to the controller, now if I press the preset, as you can see, it's changing completely the color. Now also in the software we can actually change the color of the bank strip. It is this second row here that you can see. This will contain the name of the bank. Let's quickly change that. We're gonna change the name of this bank as well. We're gonna call it Bank Awesome. and we are gonna need to do this quirk, which is on the enter of the bank, we wanna have a utility message, and we want to set the bank background and text color, and we want now that color, I want it blue, let's say, and the text color, I want that white. And if I save this, you will see that nothing will change on the device. The preset name has changed, which will be on display number 2. Bank Awesome is there, that's great, but this is still orange and I want it to be blue. So the way you go about it, you need to change the bank, and yeah, it's there. So you can see that this is quite useful. Also on the display number 1, we can now see the name of the last pressed preset. This is pretty neat. Another very cool thing is that if you have a MIDI tap tempo preset, I've got one already set up. It's on page 2. Yes, there you go. So now if I tap this switch, this is now sending a MIDI clock. I have a tap tempo MIDI clock that is sending the MIDI clock to all the devices connected. And I'm using this to control a particular device that doesn't have an external foot switch, or I don't want to use the relay port. And speaking about the relay ports, let's see how do we set these up into the software. So to set this up, you need to go into the controller settings, and you will find configure omniport. I'm just gonna show you this in this way because it's much easier, because you can set whatever expression port omniport to be an external omniport relay interface. You go back to your preset, we will choose an action here, we will say a press action, and then we will go into the the device section, it's the other devices, and you will pick a Morningstar relay interface here. And as you can see here, you can just choose your omniport as well as the 2 AB relay ports. So don't be afraid to use the omniports if you spare some, if using a bigger jack is important for you, if you feel this isn't gonna break as easy as a 3.5 millimeters. Now there is another feature that I like quite a lot, and this is that we can now use images. I've already chosen the position 1 on my switch to be green and the position 2 to be white. And now I'm just gonna add /R for right, and this will be my play, and then I'm gonna add /S for square, and this will be my stop. And if I create a press action that is gonna toggle the preset, and I save, and we go and see what's going on here on our controller, we got a play, stop. This is pretty neat. It's much better than actually having to read play and stop. Morningstar has clearly worked a lot to make our life easier when it comes to editing all those presets and banks. But still, I believe there is room for improvement. I believe the mistake with these controllers is to just have one preset per switch, when actually we do 3 different things per switch, which means that these should actually be 3 presets. What do I mean by this? Well, we do one action with single tap on the preset A, and then a separate action with double tap, and then another action with long press. This means that editing this with one preset only, it's quite a lot tedious, and I'm actually going to show you in the software what do I mean by that. So here we have an example of a preset where I have the single press that is calling a program change, then I have a double tap that is toggling a CC on and off, and then I have a long press that is actually toggling another CC on and off as well. And as you can see, to be able to program this, although Morningstar is trying to make this very, very easy for us, still is a bit convoluted. And I believe the way to simplify this is to consider this switch as actually 3 presets in one. And this will mean that A will have AS preset for single, AD for double, AL for long. And then if we separate these messages, which are actually three, into three different presets, everything is going to be much easier to edit in the software. And we can finally use our toggle mode in the preset if we want to use a double tap and a long press. Now, to take the whole thing a whole new step forward, what I would also do for next implementation of the MC6 Pro, MK2 maybe, I would move these two switches a little bit more close to the other and these two switches here as well. And this will give us a space to have maybe 6 displays. And this will give us the chance to have a row per message, so a row per single, a row per double tap messages, and a row for the long tap. So all of a sudden I have 3 presets per switch, and I can actually see what every single one does and if they're toggled on and off, and I can have actually a toggle mode in the editor that is doing this for me. I hope this makes sense. I tried my best. It's a bit complicated. What do you guys think about this? Maybe it's a stupid idea, I don't know. Let me know in the comment box, or maybe let me know why this cannot be done. Now, there are other things that make this device quite not perfect, and perhaps the most important one is the viewing angle of the displays. Now, the combination of the displays not being that crisp, the resolution not being amazing, as well as if I tilt my head slightly, then the colors are also changing slightly. Well, this means that I cannot know 100% what these switches are doing if I'm standing and perhaps I'm not exactly straight in front of the pedal board, which is a bit of a shame because this may limit the way we will program this device. We will program it with less things because we cannot know for sure what all these switches are doing and in which bank we are. Now, there are other things. I had problems to hook this up with one of my computers. The Morningstar software would just be stuck on loading. And combine this with the fact that you cannot actually edit anything on board in the hardware because the font of the editing menu is so small. Well, this can actually be a problem, but I'm sure that Morningstar is right now updating the firmware. This device is quite new, and also all my other computers were working fine. It's just the one that I needed to use that wasn't working, so maybe something was wrong with my computer. There is also something else. If I want to edit this, I cannot do it on board, as we said before, the fonts are too small for that, but also if I have my DAW open, then I'm not able to open the software. I need to close the DAW and open the software, and this is quite annoying because it means that if I've done a mistake editing, then I need to open the DAW, check that everything is fine, close the DAW, reopen the Morningstar software, tweak it, reopen the DAW. It's just not convenient. There are some other MIDI controllers that can do that, so it can be done. Maybe again, something is wrong with my computer though. Do I recommend the MC6 Pro? Well, sure, if you can find one. Unfortunately, they are sold out all the time. So again, if you're looking for something similar that can do something pretty much on the like, and perhaps even better in some instances, then make sure you check the next video upcoming very soon, in which I'm comparing pretty much any MIDI controller there is on earth in the shape of a pedal board, and then you can make your choice. Hopefully you enjoyed this video as much as I did. I'm Aleloy, this is Ale Suggest, audio and video suggestions for the creative minds, and I will see you here very soon.